Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful day and an absolutely productive weekend. I definitely did, but it was not as much in my garden or things of that nature as I would have liked, unfortunately. Hopefully, that will get corrected this weekend and even some this week. Tonight, we're going to read an article that I've been really looking forward to. I haven't read it without you guys. I decided I'd just wait and read it with you. And you can find this at Rewilding, the magazine, and it is not on the article here, unfortunately, but it is a neat little magazine, and I'll post some links when we're done tonight. All right, so why rewilders shouldn't forget about fungi. Timo Mendez. These mostly hidden life forms have a big role to play in rewilding and need its support too. Fungi have bewildered people for millennia. Their peculiar nature inhabits a space between worlds, bridging the visible and the unseen, the tangible and the ethereal, the known and the unknowable. While we can see many fungi with the naked eye, they usually make their presence known just for brief moments in their life cycles. More than anything, though, fungi have long been forgotten. They've been ignored, disregarded, and set aside by most standards, including in conservation and rewilding. The entire fungi kingdom, more closely related to us humans and our animal kin than plants are, is rarely included in conservation frameworks, legislation, or restoration plans. I just don't understand that myself. That's so unfortunate. I love the mushrooms. I'm always so excited when I see mushrooms growing, as long as it's not too many, right? All right. This is despite the many roles that these organisms have in ecological systems and the fact that many are under threat from the climate and biodiversity crisis. Earlier this year, 432 fungi were added to the IUCN Red List, bringing it to a total of 1,300 red-listed fungi species, many of which are threatened with extinction. While there are surely many more threatened species unaccounted for, the move at least marks a growing recognition of the need to conserve fungi. As we'll explore in the sections that follow, rewilding offers promising paths to support fungal biodiversity. But just as notably, fungi may actively support rewilding itself, more than just mushrooms. When most people think of fungi, they envision the mushrooms that appear in forests and meadows during the rainy season. But mushrooms are merely the temporary reproductive structures of a much larger and longer-lived organism that lives as a fine network of filaments known as mycelium. This network inhabits soils and organic debris, sometimes living for decades or even millennia, and over its lifetime can produce tens of thousands of individual mushroom-fruiting bodies. And while mushrooms are the charismatic ambassadors of the kingdom, mushroom-forming fungi represent only a small sliver of an estimated 2 to 4 million fungi species. Others include microscopic yeasts and rusts, as well as networks of mycelium that can span acres in size. They are extremely diverse in form and function and often considered as a mega kingdom due to the diverse roles they play in ecosystems. Many fungi act as agents of decay. Others are pathogenic, while some form mutualistic symbiosis with plants and animals. In each of these roles, the impacts of fungi can drastically alter the nature of an ecosystem. For example, fungal decomposers break down organic compounds that non-fungal organisms can't. Without fungi, the global nutrient cycling process would come to a near standstill, meaning that nutrients would remain locked up in organic materials and unavailable for plants and animals. Microscopic pathogenic fungi can also alter ecosystems in massive ways. The near extinction of the American chestnut due to fungal blight is a prime example, as well as the dramatic impacts of Dutch elm disease around the world. Another important group are the mycorrhizal fungi, which are associated with the roots of more than 90% of plant species. This is the stuff that you can get to put into water and add to your garden, mycorrhizal fungi. Fossil evidence suggests that these fungi are as ancient as land plants themselves, with their symbiosis predating the evolution of true roots. In this light, Roots can be seen as structures that evolved to support fungal partnerships. Recent estimates indicate that mycorrhizal fungi transfer around 13.12 gigatons of carbon dioxide into soils each year, equivalent to roughly 36% of annual fossil fuel emissions, highlighting their crucial role in the global carbon cycle and climate regulation. The challenge of fungi in conservation. To better understand how the complexity of fungi is navigated in real-world conservation work, I spoke with Matthew Wainhouse, Senior Specialist for Fungi and Lichens at Natural England. He is also co-author of a paper titled Unseen Connections, The Role of Fungi in Rewilding. Oh, you can bet I'm looking that up, along with David Satori, whom I'll introduce later. I often get asked about the role of fungi in rewilding, but people don't do the same for animals. They break them down into herbivores, carnivores, etc. People tend to lump all fungi together, which makes it harder to define their role, Wainhouse explains. As the fungi specialist at Natural England, I'm responsible for an entire kingdom. Meanwhile, there are multiple specialists for mammals and 3 just for invertebrates, groups with far fewer known species, but far more institutional support. That imbalance shapes how we talk about fungi. He further emphasized, stating, the NGOs, the land managers, they're not talking and thinking about fungi. They're thinking about birds, they're thinking about butterflies, but not fungi. This challenge is only exacerbated by the significant knowledge gap in the study of fungi. Only a fraction of fungal species, about 150,000, have been formally described by science. As Wainhouse notes, the rest is just a great big mystery. Not only do we not know who they are, but we have no idea what roles they might play in ecosystems, let alone in specific conservation practices such as rewilding. Veteranizing with keystone fungi. While much of Wainhouse's work focuses on monitoring fungal biodiversity and providing guidance to land managers, he also conducts research on using fungi to accelerate habitat creation. Have you come across the concept of veteranizing trees? Wainhouse asks me. The idea is you artificially damage a tree, kickstarting the process of decomposition to create features like cavities. Thousands of bird species, mammals, amphibians, and reptiles are associated with tree cavities. They are hugely, hugely important. While damaging a tree for the purpose of conservation might sound counterintuitive, Wainhouse emphasizes that the process isn't harmful for trees. The idea is to promote decay in a tree's inner heartwood, which is made up of dead woody tissues, while leaving the outer living circumference unharmed. This not only attracts wildlife, which will fertilize the tree with their droppings, but can also help the tree remain more stable during strong winds and storm events. Veteranization is typically conducted through mechanical damage, such as creating woodpecker-like holes or damaging the bark. But the approach Wainhouse is researching introduces fungi into the equation with the goal of further accelerating the process. Without inoculation, you're really dependent on the sort of stochastic random arrival of spores, he says. Our thought was, why don't we select the fungus and put that in the tree, and it can really go wild and do the job that we want it to. The goal of artificially inoculating living trees with heart-root fungi is to create tree cavities much more quickly than they would naturally form in nature. Something like an oak doesn't really get these functional cavities until it's at least 200 years old, Wainhouse says. Yes, we can let nature do its thing, but if we all want the rich biodiversity associated with veteran trees, we need to think about how we accelerate decomposition. The tree is a keystone structure, while the fungus is a keystone species within it. The choice of fungus also influences the type of rot produced, which in turn affects the structure and stability of the resulting cavity for different species. For example, the beefsteak fungus, Fistulina hepatica, produces a special rot in oak heartwood that creates ideal conditions for the noble chafer beetle. I'm not trying to read that one. Scarce in the UK, which depends on this specific decay type to complete its life cycle. Fungal interventions. Intervening with fungi for conservation isn't limited to veteranization. In Finland, researchers have successfully cultured and inoculated woody debris with critically endangered fungi. Their goal is to reintroduce fungi that are rare or missing from a habitat and provide a source population from which they can reproduce. This helps support not only the critically endangered fungi, but also many other organisms, such as invertebrates, who may be co-evolved with these species. Other researchers are exploring how they might utilize mycorrhizal fungi, which associate with plant roots to promote the health and establishment of forests. Mycorrhizal fungi is already widely used in forestry to ensure that more trees survive after being planted. However, conservation applications are far more complex. David Satori, a PhD researcher at Kew Gardens, cautions against assuming that inoculation is a silver bullet. There's simply no way that fungal inoculations could ever come close to emulating the immense complexity and diversity of natural communities, he says. A single mature tree can be host to dozens of species, each of which will comprise hundreds of genetic individuals. As he points out, inoculation doesn't establish a diverse fungal community. Most of the species typically used are of least concern from a conservation standpoint, and many tree nurseries use commercial inoculants with low genetic diversity or even varieties that are not native to the region. Regardless, research in this field is growing and perhaps can someday be applied to support the unique functions of specific mycorrhizal species in specific habitats. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Rewilding for fungi. While using fungi as a tool in rewilding is appealing, it's only one side of the story. Rewilding itself can have profound impacts on fungal biodiversity. Satori emphasizes the importance of thinking in terms of rewilding for fungi. That is, restoring the ecological conditions that will allow fungal diversity to flourish on its own. There are lots of threatened fungal species that depend on large areas of habitat with long ecological continuity, heterogeneous landscapes, nearby resources for dispersal, and functioning ecological processes, he says. Rewilding is exactly the practice that leads to all of those things. Properly executed rewilding projects may already be positively impacting fungal biodiversity. When landscapes are allowed to regenerate with the help of keystone species such as large animals, they begin to accumulate the structural and ecological features that fungi depend on: mature trees, coarse woody debris, intact soil layers, and varied microclimates. One compelling demonstration comes from the Arid Recovery Reserve in Central Australia, where researchers studied the effects on fungal biodiversity of reintroducing 4 native mammals to an area previously overrun by exotic species. By analyzing DNA in soil samples, the researchers found that fungal communities were significantly different in areas with reintroduced native mammals. Crucially, some fungi were found only inside the reserve and were also detected in the native mammals' scat, directly linking their presence to fungal dispersal and community composition. Biodiversity includes fungi too. Rewilding is not just about protecting individual species. It's about reestablishing the relationships between them, many of which are complex and poorly understood. When it comes to fungi, those relationships are often invisible, but no less vital. Whether cycling nutrients, forming symbioses, or creating habitat through decay, fungi are foundational to the ecological processes that rewilding seeks to restore. Yet their inclusion in conservation is still the exception, not the rule. If rewilding is to fulfill its promise of rebuilding functional ecosystems, fungi should be brought into the discussion not just as passive beneficiaries, but as active agents of renewal. Rewilding for fungi means creating the conditions in which they can thrive. Rewilding with fungi means recognizing that ecosystems cannot thrive without them. Just like bugs, right? We've talked about how bugs help with the composition of soil and how they help with decay. And there you have it again. These are 2 massively important parts of all ecosystems. All right. Let's jump in and see where we're at here. Set up for success is the next chapter. And we can read a couple of segments and then we'll shut down for the night. So we're reading Leaves, Roots, and Fruits by Nicole Johnsey Burke. who is the creator of Gardenary. Set up for success. My house was known as the place where the dead fern grows. She and her daughter laughed and said these words to me as we walked through our kitchen garden together, picking cherry tomatoes, squash, eggplants, and arugula. There weren't any ferns to speak of, but nothing looked dead here. I met Anu when she moved into her new home and wanted a kitchen garden as a centerpiece. Now, a few years later, she was stepping out each day to harvest something for dinner. This former plant killer was living garden to table, using fresh greens and harvests from her own garden each week in the family meals. So what changed? Her setup. Instead of growing a few plants here and there or trying to water a few pots on the porch, Anu now had a dedicated space for the garden created with tall and wide raised beds that were easy to access and perfect for deep-rooted plants. The location was chosen to maximize the sunlight her plants could receive each day of the year. The soil was prepared using local compost that was replenished every season before being planted again. The plants and seeds were spaced just right. Watering was automated and consistent, thanks to drip lines installed throughout each bed. The time required in the garden, less than half an hour of tending and harvesting each day. With each step you take in the garden, take a note from Anu, and to ensure your garden doesn't become the place where the dead fern grows. Take the time to set up your garden to incorporate the necessary inputs for each step from the beginning. Sunlight, space, time and temperature, water, nutrients, and care. These are the key inputs no matter what you're growing in the leaves, roots, and fruit system. And light is of first importance. Sunlight. Consider sunlight as the energy source from your garden plants. The rays from the sun hit your plant's leaves and literally turn them on. All plants need sunlight to grow, but some need more than others. When the leaves absorb enough sunlight, they use the sun's energy to break down water molecules brought into the plant through its roots, and carbon dioxide molecules, which enter the plant through tiny holes in its leaves, flowers, stems, and roots, into glucose or sugar, and oxygen. This sugar circulates through the plant to provide energy for new growth or cell repair, and the oxygen is released back into the atmosphere. This is the magical process known as photosynthesis. The rate at which leaves can photosynthesize depends on the amount of light that reaches the leaves, the ambient temperature, and the availability of water and nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. In other words, your plant's growing time is directly tied to its sunning time. But just because your plants need light to grow doesn't mean your plant's leaves have to bathe in direct light from sunrise to sunset. In fact, each plant's needs are different, depending on species, growth habit, and reproductive cycle. And so then it has a nice little chart that talks about each of these different types of plants. And so you have the setup for the leaves, roots, and fruit system. Step 1, sprouts and microgreens. A container, seed starting tray 4 to 6 inches deep. Plant spacing. Seeds are scattered but not overlapping. Soil. Seed starting mix. Sunlight. 0 hours for sprouts. 10 to 12 hours of artificial light for microgreens. Temperature. 45 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Water. Rinse sprouts daily. Add 1 inch of water to bottom tray for microgreens. Time. 5 to 7 days for sprouts. 10 to 21 days for microgreens. Step 2. Herbs. Container is container or raised bed 12 inches tall. Plant spacing 1 to 6 per square foot. Soil, sandy loam soil. Sunlight, 2 to 4 hours per day. Temperature, 45 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit plus. Water, 1 inch of water per week or when soil is dry. Time, 25 to 60 days. Do you remember when we talked about how each step will require more space, more water, more light, right? As well as more care. Step 3, salad greens. For the container, it can be a container or raised bed 6 to 12 inches tall. So you're still in that same basic area. Plant spacing, 1 to 16 per square foot. Soil, compost and topsoil mix. Sunlight, 4 to 6 hours per day. Temperature, 45 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's not plus, that's where it kind of stops. They stop doing as well after that temperature. For water, check moisture levels daily. Never let soil dry completely. Time, 30 to 60 days. So you're looking at a month to 2 months at that point. And you have to keep the water wet. You have to keep the soil moist throughout the entire process, right? You never let the soil dry completely. And so that's the third step. And that's how much more intensive the process is, right? Step 4, roots. Container. Now, a regular container isn't going to work. Raised bed, 6 to 12 inches tall. Plant spacing, 6 to 36 per square foot. Soil, a 103 mix. See page 69. Sunlight, 6 to 8 hours per day. Temperature, 45 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Water, 1 inch of water per week. Time, 35 to 90 days plus, depending on the type of root that it is. Step 5, and I won't read these. You guys get the process. You have step 5, tubers, bulbs, and rhizomes. Step 6, small fruit. Step 7, large fruit. The difference being things like strawberries or tomatoes, right? And then step 8, you're going back to seeds. Okay, so small fruit, yes, definitely tomatoes. Large fruit is probably your squash. And so that is the step-by-step system that supports the idea behind Gardenary, leaves, roots, and fruits. Remember, she also said she should have included bushes and trees on there. Berries and trees, bushes and trees. There are other bushes that have things besides berries as well. All right. As you learn the LRF, there we go. As you learn the LRF system, you'll better understand the light needs of the particular plant you're aiming to grow. But when in doubt, think about the stages of plant growth. If you're growing a plant to harvest it in its earlier stage of growth, leaf or stem, then that plant will need less hours of light. Similarly, if you're hoping to harvest a plant at a later stage, fruit or seed, then more hours of light each day is necessary. No matter their sunlight needs, most plants will survive in less than optimal light for their species. They just won't thrive. If you're okay with plants taking longer to mature or growing but not maturing fully, you can have more flexibility when it comes to your garden's sunlight needs. If you plan to grow in a container or a raised bed but haven't set up the site yet, find a spot that gets as much sunlight as possible. Light should be your number one priority when selecting a location for your raised beds. In the northern hemisphere, place your garden on the south side of any tall structures like fences, homes, or trees so it will receive winter sunlight. On the northern side if you're in the southern hemisphere. After you've selected locations that maximize sunlight, you can narrow down your decision on where to place the containers or beds based on proximity to a water source, easy access to the kitchen, and overall aesthetics in the landscape. So, sunlight needs per step. Daily hours of sunlight. Steps 1 and 2, sprouts and herbs need 2 to 4 hours of sunlight. Step 3, leafy greens, 4 to 6. Steps 4 and 5, roots, bulbs, and tubers, 6 to 8 hours. Steps 6 and 7, small and large fruit, 8 to 10 plus. And step 8, seeds, 10 plus hours. Space. Just like with light and time, the space in which your plants are allowed to grow is directly correlated to their production. For an 8 to 10 pound harvest of cucumbers, your cucumber vines will need to grow 8 to 10 feet long. But you can grow 1 pound of radishes in less than 1 square foot. In fact, with a few exceptions, the heavier and larger the harvest in pounds, the more space and square feet is required. A small bowl of sprouts will grow in less than a square foot. Growing a large ripe sphere of melon will require at least 10 times that amount of room. Each leaf or root or fruit crop grown requires an entire plant system to support it. So the larger the harvest, the larger the growing space required. As you progress from one LRF step to the next, you'll increase your growing space a little at a time. Have only a windowsill to grow on? No worries. Got an entire backyard to fill? We can do that too. Here's a preview of the amount of gardening space we fill at each step in this book. Step 1, half to 1 square foot. Step 2, half to 1 square foot. Step 3, it does require 1 square foot, as does step 4. By step 5, you're looking at 1 to 2 square feet. Step 6, 2 to 3 square feet. Step 7, 3 to 10 square feet. And step 8, 1 to 10 square feet, right? It's all dependent on the plant. For steps 1 through 3, set up a container space. When looking for a container for your herbs or salad greens, keep in mind each plant's potential growth, not just the size it is for now. A pot that's too small for a growing plant means the plant can't send its roots deeper to reach for more nutrients or water when it needs it. You'll have greater success picking a pot that is that's at least as deep and wide as the plant will grow up and out. Instead of growing each plant in its own pot, try planting all of your herbs or salad greens in one large container together. Look for a container that's about 4 feet wide and at least 8 to 12 inches deep to give each plant enough room to stretch out its roots. Choose a natural or food-safe material for your pot or container, such as terracotta, stainless steel, or natural fiber bag. Look for words like food grade and untreated, so you don't have to worry about anything unsafe leaching into your food. If the container you select doesn't have holes, drill your own to ensure proper drainage so plants' roots don't sit in water and rot. For steps 4 through 6 or 7, set up a raised bed space. Raised beds provide the ideal growing conditions for many fruiting plants and vegetables with roots that like to dig down deep. In addition to keeping your garden looking attractive, raised beds allow you to start with the best soil possible, maintain more consistent soil temperature, and provide better drainage, not to mention that tending a raised garden bed is so much easier. When selecting materials for your raised beds, choose a natural material. For wood, there's untreated cedar, redwood, or hemlock. Stone, Corten steel, and powder-coated steel also make beautiful and durable raised bed containers. For steps 6 and 8, use supports and trellises for your space in a raised bed garden or row garden. Trellises offer needed support and maximize growing space by giving climbing plants a place to grow up instead of out. By holding plants in place, trellises help maintain good airflow and make tending easier, keeping both your vining plants and their neighbors healthy. The best trellises allow plants to grow on the outside of the support structure. Panel, obelisk, and arch trellises double your growing space as vines grow up, not just out. And next week we'll start at time and temperature, I think. Yes, because there's still several sections after that. So we're not going to make it through that tonight. And so what do you guys think of that? Does that, in your mind, does that help clarify anything, thinking about that as simpler to more complex foods that we can grow in our gardens, and how not only the food itself being more complex, but how it equates to the sunlight needs, time needed, all of these things?
I also pulled out my I forgot what it's called. I have to find it again, but it's like a microgreen starter. Let me see.
Nice, nice. Yes, we had wanted to try to do that today, but trying to catch up, I didn't quite get to that, and then I didn't realize it, but my husband had eaten all of the jalapenos almost, so I'm going to go buy some more jalapenos tomorrow, and so we'll do some filming with jalapenos, getting those pickled jalapenos going, and the microgreens. And so any pictures that you want to take, or you can do a video as well, Candace. Oh, there you go. Okay, mine's a square, and it only has 2 layers.
Well, oh, you have one too. It's like the top
Mm-hmm.
hat, little mini hole
Mm-hmm.
that you put water in it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go into each of these little.
Right, right. Yeah, I didn't have much luck with it. We tried it a couple of times. And so I'm going to start it in soil, you know?
Uh,
I think I do better with soil.
I was heavy into shakes at one point in my life, and
Mhm.
I just put some seeds in it,
Mhm.
and by the like I do it every day, like stage it every day.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then I just take it off and put it on top. That's all.
Nice, right?
Man, it's this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know, something about giving my kids the responsibility of the kitchen means that I don't spend any time in the kitchen anymore. And so the seed starter, I like soil. And so I'm hoping that with my accepting that you do have to change the soil out each year or so, that I'm going to have so much better success. But for you, are you going to try to keep going just all through what you probably could go up until almost January or something outside, couldn't you?
Yeah, but I mean, when I was doing this with microgreens,
Hmm.
it ain't so I was just
And are you going to do some more of those, or did you just want to show us?
probably will.
Yeah.
Gotta
Well,
get.
definitely, we would love to hear you walk through that whole process.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Very cool. And how about you, Miss Tammy? Or did we put you to sleep?
Oh no, I'm listening. Yeah, not tonight. Yesterday you did. Not like that. I was just laying down, listening, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, I fell asleep again. And you're probably like talking to me, and you probably hear nothing. It's like Tammy fell asleep.
I was just thinking about something that actually quite goes against our philosophy of what you're doing here. Is because sometimes a problem we get out here is cartels will set up their illegal grow operations and run chop shops out of that.
Right. You guys are so rural.
Imagine
I hear
because
that.
they chop up all their stolen vehicles and sell off the parts because you know that makes it harder to tell what happened to the actual vehicle. But if you
Hmm.
could imagine all the dirty fluids they dump in the process of doing that, it is
Oh,
horrible.
that
And then
is.
they'll
Sunflowers.
divert
Sunflowers
water
are the
systems
saviors of soil when it's
back.
been damaged like that.
That's no bueno.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. It's horrible. All of it, the whole thing. And so, no, the only time we were wondering, I thought maybe the dogs were barking because you didn't say goodnight. There was no buenos noches last night, right?
I was like, I woke up, I was like, oh no, I passed out, Sabrina again. Not
It's
again,
okay.
but it's happened one other time. But I was
Don't
like,
even worry about it. All right, guys. So let's jump in and just check out our calendar really quickly. And so we have coming up tomorrow the soil regeneration class. But if I get time, what I'd really like to do is turn this into our garden planner. And so if I have time before class, I will rebrand this whole class to fit into our garden planner and so that we start getting used to that because I think it fits better. So look for that coming soon, if not tomorrow, right? And so tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Mountain, 8:30 p.m. Central, and 9:30 p.m. Eastern, we will be back for some form of class, whether exploring organic soil regeneration or the garden planner class. All right. Super excited about all of that, you guys. And so please feel free to unmute and say goodnight. It's just the three of us, of course, but Miss Tammy was muted. So
Buenos noches,
there you
everybody.
go.
Good mañana.
Good night, guys. I hope you both enjoy your evening.
Me too.
Thank you, Candace. Bye, guys.